at all. So quite many of Estonians left from Estonia, which is very Nordic, where the climate is so-called bad, I would say, to the southern parts, and they really started to cultivate land there, made good living down there actually, and lived quite happily and peacefully for very, very many generations until this war in 1992 broke up. And that led to this fact that, which also is historically correct, that our president these days, Lennart Meri, gave opportunity to these people to move to Estonia when the war was approaching. So they really left, and the villages really remained empty. This is totally correct. And that's the point where the story starts.
The war started because the Abkhazians wanted to break away from Georgia.
Yeah, that's right. And that was Abkhazians and the Georgians kind of, they have been fighting for centuries. And this particular war was supported by Russians, of course, from Abkhazian side. And as a result of that, Georgians really lost a very beautiful piece of their land. And this is until now like that. There is a border. We were not able to shoot the film there, we shot it in Georgian side. So this is a sad historical fact again.
Now, the character of Ivo is very compelling. He shows no fear about anything. And sometimes he also almost reminds you of a godlike figure or an Abraham figure where he's standing in judgment over these soldiers, apparently not having any fear himself. What's the inspiration for him? Where did he come from?
Yes, so Zaza has really written an Estonian man, Ivo, really beautiful character. First of all, I need to say that Estonians are quite good, but maybe not as good as Ivo is really. We are doing quite well, but this is maybe too much. But anyway, why not to make one character like that in film as Ivo is? We can always hope that maybe there is somebody around like that. And that is probably the Zaza's main idea, or to show that this is maybe something we could, or at least some of us could reach one day.
Where did he come from in your mind, Ivo?
Ivo? Yeah.
Ivo's character.
Honestly, the prototype for Ivo was my grandfather. He had, I may say, he had very strong human values as Ivo. And I may say, when I was writing the screenplay, I thought about my grandfather. Yeah, that's really.
Tell me about shooting this film. So you couldn't shoot in Abkhazia. Tell me where you shot it and how that was.
Yeah, unfortunately we couldn't shoot this film in Abkhazia because we still have problems with our relationships between Georgians and Abkhazians. We shot this film in Guria. This is also the region of Georgia. And I may say there is the same landscape as Abkhazia. It's very close to Abkhazia. We shot this film in Guria, yeah, in Georgia.
And the character of the Chechen guy, he's also interesting to me. He starts out as almost a holy warrior. He has to kill this other guy as a matter of his belief, as he says it. And he then evolves. Where does he come from? And also an interesting character.
So, in a way, he is maybe even call him as a lead character in this film, because he is really the one who makes his big change. He's really starting as a warrior and hopefully leaves home in a much more peaceful way. I have to say, this character is just made up. It just came. It's like, it's probably there is no kind of nothing really what would be in the background. But just Zaza has just been figuring it out that why not to have this character.
Let me open up for questions here. What do you guys think of the film? Yes, ma'am, please. At the back here, with the glasses.
Yeah, I love this film. I've seen it a few times. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I thought it was interesting that Ahmed was a mercenary and was not fighting, well, for his own sort of political reasons or for his own national homeland reasons. Can you just talk about that?
So the question, for those of you who can't hear it, is
It was really about
the fact that Ahmed, the Chechen fighter is a mercenary. He's not a Georgian, he's not an Abkhazian, he's from another part of the former Soviet Union. And he's fighting for money. Why a mercenary for that position?
So first of all, this is just a historical fact that there really were existing these kind of Chechens were really fighting as a professional style with most probably having nothing really against Georgians or something like that. So this was just business as usual to go to war and make them work.
They don't even share a border with Georgia. They're quite far away. They're not even close to Georgia.
Yeah. In fact, it's actually as for Chechens, this is really even maybe a little bit unbelievable fact that we first of all, yes, they are not living right there. They all also, as we know, Chechnya was having troubles with Russia and but still, they made their living. Some of them made their living with just going to wars. And in this sense, and he happened to be on Abkhazian side, or even we can call it also even Russian side. So historically it was so. They really were fighting.
And the money he got was probably ultimately from Russia, not from Abkhazians.
So we really never know, yes, but we can guess.
Who else has a question?
Where was the last fight? Those people are from where?
Which people?
The last shooting at the end of the movie.
The last shooting.
Yeah.
So, well, you tell us, who are the people that came up in the Jeep at the end?
Yes, we will be trying to be quite neutral and not to take sides really in this film. Still, we needed to bring in somebody at the very end, and I have to say they were Russians.
You're friendly Russians. Who else has a question? Yes, sir. And then you.
Not so much a question, but just more a comment. Just thought it was one of the best movies I've seen for a very long time. Just wanted to appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm from Jamaica, so totally different part of the world. It was brilliant.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, you had a question here. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was there any sort of religious component to the conflict with the two sides? Like, was the Georgians are Christian and the others are Muslim? Is that part
Let me
of
just repeat. So the question is whether there's a religious component to the war. The Georgians are clearly Christians. The Chechen was Muslim, but the war itself, was it a religious war?
So honestly, actually, it wasn't. Still, Georgians and Abkhazians, they are both Christians. But that was another good reason to bring in the Chechen, to have this kind of layer as well, because Chechens again are Muslims.
Yes, sir, and then you. Sir first. Yeah.
Sorry, just to kind of get some more maybe historical clarification. At the beginning of the movie, I'm just trying to like figure out who's on what side and all of that. And I'm thinking the Chechens hate the Russians, the Georgians hate the Russians. So who's fighting whom and who's on whose side? So just from a historical perspective, does this happen before the Chechens hated the Russians? Before the Chechens started fighting the Russians? Is that when this actually took place, or is all
So-
of that happening, is that Chechen conflict happening at the same time?
Question is, who hated whom first? Did the Chechens hate the Russians before the Abkhazians, or how did it all happen?
No, the question is totally right. Of course, it's really confusing. It's how possibly could you know all these things? It's and it is more or less in the same time, really. But in fact, the Abkhazian war was happening a little bit before the first Chechen war, really. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really say that Chechens were very pro-Russian all the time. They probably wasn't, and they were not, and probably they are not until today. But again, this is this professional soldier fact that they were really warriors. They are really warriors, and they were used to just the guys would just make money and go and fight. Which is it's really strange. It's sort of understandable that it's confusing because really Chechens and Georgians they all have their reasons not to be very kind of on Russian side maybe. Okay, Zaza also said that in this Abkhazian war, still the Russian support was kind of. Of course, nobody, as we know, abuse it today as well. That today the war is going on, that Russia is not in the war, and it was the same thing in 1992. Actually, the Abkhazia was trying. It was more or less the small little war between Abkhazia and Georgia, and no one really knew. Actually, no one really should have knew that Russia is behind that. So it's
Sir, and then you, man.
So, thanks again for the movie. One of the things I really, really enjoyed about the film was right from the onset, you sort of set the expectation within the characters, Marcus especially, that things were going to be infinitely better. So they're waiting for someone to pick up the Tangerines a couple of days out, and then that didn't pan out. And I think Aslan was going to come pick up the Tangerines, and that didn't pan out. And then, it was always going to be better, but it never really was. And can you talk about how much of that, may potentially sort of still linger with the populace, or at least in that time when the film sort of is set? Was that really the feeling through the course of the war that things would get better, but it never really did?
So the question is, the two Estonians were always planning, even during the fighting, to get their Tangerines out, hoping that it would get better, and it never got better. And the question is whether that was a general condition that the civilians living in that area, whether they thought it was going to get better, and it never did.
So it's hard to say. Probably everyone really expects that it's getting to be better. At the same time, the villages really were empty, and there were not much people around for these days already. And I would even say that also the remaining people, they were maybe even more thinking about leaving as well. But of course, these ones who stayed, they needed to go on with their lives and as they grow tangerines and do what all the everyday works as they have used to do.
You had a question here.
Yes, was the war really just the vehicle to tell the story of these four men and how they evolved and how two opposing soldiers came to really care about each other?
So the question, for those of you who couldn't hear it, is, was the war just a vehicle to tell the story of these four men and how two opposing viewpoints came to come together?
So yes, we used to say that the war really is on the background of the story. So first of all, this is a drama between these four men and mainly about the human values and how to survive being human even in these hard circumstances. So yes, and the drama was made up. So it's just the drama was, and kind of the war was in the background and drama was the first. If that was something what you
Yes,
were
that,
expecting.
that really answers my question.
Thank you.
And the language they're all speaking is Georgian, correct?
Yeah, this is totally wrong.
Huh?
No, actually, the film is, sorry. The film is, has two languages really. They mainly talk Russian in the film. Because the common language for two Estonians, one Chechen and one Georgian was Russian these days. So mainly this is Russian language, but of course Estonians among each other, Estonians speak Estonian, which is again, we have our own language, which is totally different from Russian, I need to say, and also Russian language. So roughly two-thirds of the film is in Russian language and 1/3 in Estonian, and we have also a couple of words in Chechen, which is motherfucker actually.
Are there any more questions? Yes, sir, please.
Could you elaborate a little bit on, it seemed like there was a recurring theme of honor, keeping your word, respect for elders, not killing someone when they're weak, sort of not guard and even, what's his name, Aslan, the visiting, he also says he keeps his word that he offers his word that in 2 days. It seems like every character, or almost every character, has some kind of conversation about keeping their word or respecting his granddaughter or respecting his age, respecting another religion. So I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that.
The question is the recurring theme of keeping your word, which all characters at some point seem to come to terms with, and the mountain men keep their word, or the Estonians keep their word. What's the thought there?
So first of all, yes, we really hope that we say the word and we keep the word, of course, but this is really very common in Caucasia, for example, in mountains really. If somebody has been, if I say it is so, then it is so. If I say I don't kill him in my house, I don't really do that. Also respect to elderly people for Georgians is really common. This is really, really very important thing for them. So this is one side of that really the people on that area act like that. We really hope that we are the same all, more or less we are, hopefully. But it is really also very, very, I would say, important subject in this film, yes. So we were trying to keep it up all the time, but let's try to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, let's make this a last question. Thank you, please.
Yeah, that just brought to mind the phrase, there's honor among thieves, and this is reminding me there's honor among murderers.
Honor among thieves, honor among murderers. I guess they were killers more than murderers, right?
If they even were, it's maybe in deeper inside, I don't know how much killers they really were. Maybe they were not.
Okay, we'll have one more. Go.
So how did you decide to make this the Estonian nomination and not the Georgian? How did you choose?
So why was it an Estonian nomination, not a Georgian nomination, when it could have gone either way?
Yeah, this is it's first of all, this is a co-production, of course, between Georgia and Estonia. We need to name it Estonia and Georgia. It's quite equal in many ways. The film still a little bit more both of creative control and financing was coming from Estonian side. So we needed to name one, and that was Estonia.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for coming. And good luck with the Oscars.